We are continuing our study in the Gospel of Matthew, with Matthew chapter 29, Matthew chapter 15, and verses 29 to 32. I'm glad to have you along as we study and look at the Gospel of Matthew and the story of Jesus and its continuing relevance to us and our lives today. This is reading from Goodspeed's translation, which is an early 20th century translation. The New Testament in American translation by Edgar J. Goodspeed. Matthew chapter 15 and beginning at verse 29. Jesus left that place and went along the shore of the Sea of Galilee and went up on the hillside and sat down there. Then the great crowds came to him, bringing with them those who were lame, crippled, blind, or dumb, and many others, and they laid them down at his feet, and he cured them, so that the people were astonished to see the dumb speak, the lame walk, and the blind see. And they praised the God of Israel. And then verse 32, then Jesus called the disciples to him and said, I pity these people, for they've been staying with me 3 days now, and they have nothing left to eat, and I do not mean to send them away hungry, for they may give out on the way. A mark of the evangelical church in North America is our obsession on numbers. Numbers is something that is used to measure success, to measure what we are doing, to give us a sense of accomplishment and a sense that we are actually doing something significant and important. A great church is one that has several thousand people attended. A church service where the attendance was double the norm is a great service. A ministry that reaches to hundreds of people is significant. The point is that if the numbers are there, then we tend to believe that that was something successful. It is logically simple and logically simply seductive. It is also fundamentally flawed. Numbers by themselves tell us absolutely nothing. In order for numbers to mean something, we have to find a way to extract information from the numbers to see what is happening. If you go back to reading number 150 or lesson number 158, you'll remember that we talked about how we probably could say that the feeding of the 5,000 happened in the spring because of green grass, and the feeding of the 4,000 that is here happened late summer when the grass was gone and all you had was ground for people to sit on. Two major feedings and two huge crowds. You would think from the numbers that Jesus had, he was making great progress in his ministry. Then you read John chapter 6 and the aftermath of the feeding of the 5,000, and you realize that not all was well in Jesus' ministry. Jesus could draw the numbers, but Jesus was not getting the followers. The people came in the thousands to be healed and fed by Jesus, but they were not interested in Jesus as their Lord and Savior. The foundation for Christian monasticism came in the 3rd century of the Common Era. If you know anything about European history, the monastic movement is a key part of medieval European history. It will shape and define it. The monastic movement emerges out of a number of elements that were not necessarily Christian and that were present in the Roman Empire at the time. We can think of such things and ideas as asceticism, the renunciation of marriage, human sexuality falls under this. What contributed to the growth of monasticism in the 4th century was, in a sense, the success of the church and its increase numerically. And here, a key historical event is the Edict of Milan in 313. Now, this directly had nothing to do with the church, but indirectly it powerfully shaped the emerging church in that century, because the Edict of Milan was an edict of religious toleration. What this did was create, on the surface, religious peace in the Roman Empire. The net effect was that this made the church have standing in the Roman Empire. And in and through the 4th century, the church would emerge as a dominant social institution. And here we think in particular of the reign of Constantine the Great. So the church would go from being a persecuted religious minority, simplified story, to a socially important institution in the Roman Empire. It would move from where the cost of being a part of the church was real and actual to where the church became a necessary tool for social advancement and career advancement in the Roman Empire. In other words, as the church increased numerically in this era, it also flattened out in terms of spiritual zeal and commitment. The monastic movement was a way for people in the church to feed that desire to seek after Christ and his kingdom. In a worldly church, the monastic movement became an alternative to the perceived lack of faith, commitment, and ultimately corruption of the institutional church of the day. You see, the church in the 4th century had the numbers, but no longer the faith commitment. Again, we're saying this is a simplified story. The monastic movement swelled as people came searching for a deeper faith commitment. When I look at the state of the church in the Roman Empire in the 4th century, I think I see a parallel to the church in my day and age in North America. I do not think history operates with some sort of determinism, yet I cannot help but think that our push for numbers and our zeal to popularize the faith will have the same effect as it did then. If we do not make our churches places where people can seek God and explore their faith, they will look elsewhere. Again, that's the simplified story of the monastic movement of the 4th century. This is a lesson we learned from the early church. We live in a different era, and that does not necessarily mean that we will see the reemergence of the monasticism. It may mean other forms of Christian life and experience and the expression therein. Jesus understood and knew that numbers did not necessarily mean anything. Remember, yes, there were 5,000 fed, then 4,000, but there were only 12 apostles, and the number of disciples above and beyond that was not that great. Yet Jesus took that few in number group and would build his church to the point where it would become the dominant social institution in the Roman Empire in the 4th century. He did that in spite of not actually having real numbers